Ink on the Rhine. Written by Stefan Richter. Narrated by Charlotte Baker. For Marie, even if I can't be in your life, I'm glad I had the greatest of pleasure to know you. I miss you, Marie. Chapter 3. Damien skeptically looked at the injera before him, and beyond it across the long tables strewn with various plates of rich-smelling exotic food. Light refracted off of dozens of glasses with differing levels of fullness. I still don't get the point, he said as he grabbed some what and put it in his mouth. The point of being unconventional? I'd rather be here than in a classroom. Rolf hadn't taken a bite the whole evening, being uncomfortable with the mere thought of eating with his hands, although maybe next time we can go to a real restaurant instead. They were speaking louder than usual to hear over the din of conversation among their fellow students, and a few unfamiliar faces seated at long tables in their direct vicinity. Damien squinted in the low light cast by the decorative lamps hung from the ceiling. This is a real restaurant, and you'd starve to death in Ethiopia with your snobbishness. He took another type of what and started to make loud chewing noises solely for the purpose of irritating Rolf. Are they even allowed to take us out to dinner? He asked, with a mouthful, looking at Mia. Sure, it's a perfect place for linguists. We can study Swahili here. They don't speak Swahili in Ethiopia, you racist nincompoop. Rolf sighed. I don't even want to know where you picked up that word. From Shakespeare, of course. Don't you remember Hamlet? Damien cleaned his throat, but then took another bite of injera and continued. This, above all, he was overplaying, making wide gestures with his arms and staring at Rolf. To thine own self be true, and it must follow, as the night the day, thou canst not then be false to any nincompoop. Rolf looked askance and seemed as though he was about to give a snarky remark, but stopped himself. Anyway, I say let them do whatever they want as long as it helps us. As a postgrad, I deserve special treatment. On these words, Damien couldn't help but chuckle. Oh, as a postgrad. So you were not always like this? He smiled, showing that he was only joshing. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not used to hanging out with people who teach me, even if we are the same age. Rolf ignored the first part of the comment. It's not like we do this sort of thing every day. In any case, I find the informal setting pleasing. It feels more natural to practicing languages. Next time they just need to get a reservation at a better place. One with forks and knives. He observed the African masks hanging on the wall and looked at the waiter, who wore a traditional white linen suit with the logo of the restaurant embroidered on the front. Rolf watched him carry 2 huge dishes laden with food for another table, somehow managing to find his way through the dim, fully packed hall. He sighed and said sadly, Okay, when in Rome. Rolf stretched his arm toward the injera, but Mia's voice stopped him. Guys, I'm so glad you all came here today. So many of you. She looked over the 4 big joined tables. I hope you had a great evening and managed to get something out of it. Maybe we can go out together more often. Another African restaurant next time? On these words, Damien grinned, revealing pieces of food in his teeth as he winked at Rolf. I know it's late, continued Mia, so some of you are going to go home, but I'd like to invite the others to join us at the bar nearby. Life is short, so let's enjoy it to the fullest. Amen, said Damien as he washed the last pieces of what and the lingering taste of spices down his throat with a good slug of alcohol-free beer while looking at Mia. Like a lighthouse, her figure was standing tall over the tables, brightening the space around her and beaming with delight, infecting each and every one who was lucky enough to see or even just hear her. Alvin, who had just come back from the restroom, saw everybody going to Mia either to say goodbye or let her know that they would be waiting outside to go to the bar. He landed his heavy, wet hand on Rolf's shoulder. Did I miss anything? Rolf shook the hand off. A hand dryer. We're going out, said Damien, rolling up another injera before moving to the exit. This guy says something and just walks away, Alvin commented while patting Rolf on the shoulder. He glimpsed around the place and added, Well, at least we're leaving this hole. Couldn't they find a real restaurant instead? Damien walked outside, inhaled the electric air of the Friday night, and rounded the corner of a building to check the bars on the street nearby. The street was completely packed, and people holding beer and wine were standing at every door, talking and laughing loudly. Growing with every new stop, groups of pub crawlers migrated from one place to another, drowning memories of the work week in alcohol. "What's on your mind?" Damien suddenly heard. He turned his head toward the voice. A girl with eyes foggy from too much wine was looking at him from a distance. 2 friends were helping her to walk, as she could barely stand on her feet. Her blue bob haircut covered most of her face, revealing only one eye, a neat pointy nose and thin red lips. The combination of a white cropped tank top and jean shorts left most of her body exposed, revealing enormous, colourful tattoos. Her left arm was completely covered with a sleeve of red flowers and blue birds. The right arm had the same theme, but with the colours reversed, and a different type of flowers. Both sleeves spread onto her chest, blending together, continuing downward, ending on the left hip and on the right shin. A pitch-black raven was tattooed on the right hip, standing out from the rest of the colourful imagery. It almost appeared to be alive, as if it was staring at him. Damien looked at the girl and felt like he was being dragged unwillingly deep into his own memories. "What are you thinking about?" asked a familiar voice he had hoped he'd forgotten. "You can think about it later. Right now, it's time for fun." He could almost see the ghost from the past standing next to him, pressing her body against his. Her eyes were full of lust and recklessness, fixed on him, mouth slightly opened, lips twisted in a smile, and her tongue touching her upper right fang. She took him by the hand, squeezed it, and moved her body forward, getting so close he could feel her breath. Her other hand was holding his chin, making sure he couldn't get closer than allowed. He raised his eyebrow, pulled her arm behind her back, and bit her lower lip, soothing it with his tongue. Her eyes flashed. "What are you thinking of now?" "Liv," whispered Damien. "Who?" asked the drunk girl, bringing him back from his memories. Damien smiled at her in confusion, not knowing what to say. The girl started to laugh and shuffled away in the direction from which Damien had walked, with the help of her friends. One of them looked at Damien with a silent apology in her eyes for bothering him. He could still hear the laughter when the group turned the corner of the building, but soon there was a bang accompanied by a couple of strong swear words. Damien ran around the building to see what had happened, and saw an overturned trash can and the girls slowly moving away, staggering left to right. He uprighted the trash can and started to walk back, but stopped at the corner when he noticed Mia leaving the restaurant. The crowds were enjoying the bars on the other street, so no one was standing near the entrance, and, surprisingly enough, no one followed Mia outside. For the first time, Damien saw Mia alone and not surrounded by countless people watching her every move. She stopped, closed her eyes, and slowly opened them again. A dreadful chill ran through Damien when he saw the deep sorrow on her face. It was the same sorrow he had seen so many times before in the eyes of all the nameless ghosts he had left behind. He never gave a thought, and never cared, what lay behind those eyes, just like a child who isn't concerned with what happens to a butterfly after someone tears its wings off. He never cared until the day he saw the same look of sorrow in the mirror. It was an empty stare, hiding a never-ending torture that constantly twisted around his insides. Every breath was painful, and served as a reminder that nothing hurts more than losing one's own sense of self in another. Mia closed and opened her eyes again, stretching her lips into a smile. It was only a short moment, but it was enough for Damien to understand what she was feeling. He was standing behind the corner in shock. Never before had it occurred to him that there was something more behind her usual cheerfulness and radiant optimism. That she wasn't the happy face he saw from time to time, but a human being with her own, not always perfect life, even though she made it seem that way. He saw the actress behind the character. The facade had temporarily fallen away. He wanted to comfort her, but then realised how inappropriate it would have been and instead decided to forget about the whole episode. He knocked on the trash can to make sure she knew of his presence and to give her time to put her mask back on, then walked out from behind the corner and approached the restaurant. Mia turned her head. "Damien! Are you going to join us?" she asked enthusiastically, sparkling with joy as usual. "Sure." He glanced at her a little concerned, but then through the window caught sight of Senya, who was still getting ready indoors, and nodded in her direction. "I think I saw her at uni a couple of times. I didn't know you guys are friends. Is she going to join us?" Mia smiled like the Cheshire Cat. "There are a lot of things you don't know," she winked. "Yes, Damien, she is going to join." "So you got to know each other?" "Not really," he groaned. "We were sitting too far away. I don't even know her Mia! What a great evening!" Alvin interrupted him. It's so refreshing to be here after uni. And what a great restaurant. I love it. Nice and exotic. Was it your idea? My friend there recommended this place and I thought we should check it out. Marvellous. What would we have done without you? We would have probably died of boredom in a lecture hall. Alvin played the role of charming friend so authentically that even Damien believed him for a moment. The front door flew open and Rolf walked outside and started checking out women across the street. Senya and others left the restaurant too, but it took almost 20 minutes for everybody to say their goodbyes. Finally, the group split up and the smaller half moved to the bar nearby. The place was even more crowded than the restaurant, so instead they decided to go to a small club not far away. Everyone got their entry wristbands and they managed to find an empty couch near a dance floor. Alvin said he was going to get drinks and disappeared in the strobe lights, while Mia went dancing. The rest stayed on the couch to socialise. Damien relaxed and let the dance music knock the thoughts out of his head with every beat, one by one, until all of them were gone and he forgot about the world outside. Just like the good old times. He sat there for several minutes not saying a word, enjoying the careless atmosphere and being carried away by the bass vibrating through his body. Finally, he turned his head and looked at the others. Rolf seemed to say something to Senya, then stood up and walked away from the couch. Senya was left sitting alone, rocking to the beat. Steffi, right? Asked Damien, stretching out comfortably on the couch and still drinking his alcohol-free beer. Senya, she corrected him, grabbed the bottle out of his hand, took a sip, and made a grimace. Ugh, what the hell is that? You get used to the taste after a while. He took back the bottle and looked at Mia. She was moving with the beat like a professional dancer, her body covered in a thin layer of sweat, eyes partially closed as though in a trance. Men seemed to gravitate to her involuntarily, and soon the whole dance floor was revolving solely around Mia, like planets around the sun held in orbit and unable to break free. How long have you known each other? Asked Damien. Senya followed his eyes. Long enough, she answered, as she tried to find Alvin in the crowd, eagerly waiting for her drink so she could wash out the taste of alcohol-free beer. We went to the same school but didn't see each other for a while after that. How come? Alvin surprised everyone by suddenly coming back with the drinks. He left the glasses on the table, grabbed 2 beers and rushed to Mia. Senya also took a glass of beer and continued. We went to different universities and weren't really in touch during our student years. Damien moved closer to her so she wouldn't have to raise her voice to be heard over the music. I guess it was a shock for both of us. You know, everything changed so suddenly, and by everything, I mean everything. We had to leave our hometown, she broke up with her boyfriend, I broke up with mine. We lost contact with old friends and found new ones at uni. The time of being rebellious was over and I guess we grew up very fast. Too fast. And finally realised what we wanted in life and started to work hard towards our goals. Studying, travelling, exploring new horizons, and setting new priorities. It was a new life and everything else disappeared in a blur of tremendous speed. She finished the sentence and swallowed half of her beer in one big gulp. Either the alcohol-free beer aftertaste was awful, or the memories were making her emotional. Damien assumed it was the latter. He said, "Let me hold that for you," and took the glass from her hand. Senya found his behaviour strange, but decided not to draw attention to it. Anyhow, she leaned forward and folded her hands. That's life. What matters is that we're together again. Rolf walked up to Damien and interrupted the conversation. I'm going to the bar, guys. He was holding a cocktail glass and checking out a girl sitting cross-legged in a plain, chic, dark blue dress at the counter staring back at him. Good luck, Damien slapped him on the shoulder. I don't think I need it, pal, said Rolf with a wink as he moved toward the bar. The girl looked a bit too classy for this place, but so did he, so maybe his confidence is justified, thought Damien. Music switched to a slow dance and Mia went back to the couch despite Alvin's attempts to stop her. How's it going? She asked cheerfully and took a glass of wine from the table. Senya, do you want to go outside? I could use some fresh air, she said, putting her hand on Senya's forearm. Senya looked at Damien and stood up. We'll be right back. As they were walking out, Alvin accidentally bumped into Mia and held onto her waist. Sorry, I should look where I'm going, he said with a slick smile before letting go of her and moving to the lounge area. Man, that girl is something. I can't wait to try her out. he said while crashing onto the couch. The image of Mia standing in front of the restaurant appeared before Damien, and he shuddered again. He remembered how he had felt the last time he'd had the same look in his eyes, and while he wasn't sure he knew exactly what she was going through, he was certain that Alvin could make things worse and open old wounds no matter what had caused them. Given her attitude towards others, that wasn't the treatment she deserved. I don't think she's interested in being tried out. None of them are. Alvin took another beer before he continued. In the beginning. In any case, like I care. I'm going to have her anyhow. The ice is broken and she's already very friendly. Sorry to hurt your feelings, said Damien half-jokingly, but her being friendly doesn't mean she wants you. Have you met her? She's always friendly. To everyone. It's called common courtesy. I know the concept might not be familiar to you, but look it up in a dictionary sometime. They might have examples in there. He switched to a more serious tone. I doubt she wants to be one of the jewels in your crown, or be ruined while you're trying to fit her there. Alvin's eyes flashed with anger and extreme annoyance with the direction the conversation was taking. Didn't I tell you I don't care what she wants? And since when are you an expert in human psychology? Are you telling me what she wants? Let me reveal a huge secret to you. She doesn't know what she wants herself, just like everyone else. Do you think I should let her be because she dreams of a conventional family with 3 kids, morning services every Sunday and goodnight kisses, and I'm not up for that crap? Or maybe she dreams of a life full of adventures, or one-night stands, or she just wants to fall in love. He put his hands under his chin, fluttered his eyelashes, and then quickly changed back to his former attitude. Or whatever they all think they want. Well, they have no idea. Nobody does. People think about one thing, want another, and talk about something completely different. Why should I care about that nonsense? I know what I want, and I'm going to get it, one way or another. Maybe when she's 40 or something, she will finally realise what she really wants, and maybe it won't even be too late yet. Or maybe it will be. It's not my problem. She can talk about it with a therapist for all I care. I know she wouldn't want to be used, said Damien assertively. Alvin glared at him with a bit of surprise, completely caught off guard by this turn of conversation. What's your problem anyway? You sure there's no alcohol in that bottle? It's always about being used. And you should know it better than anyone else. He grinned, knowing that he had hit a raw nerve. That's how society works. You use people to get what you want. Remember the girl before Lisa? What was her name again? Whatever, the one with the legs. She was always trying to create one of those perfect families you see in the commercials. I bet she had a script hidden somewhere under the bed that had all the things her husband was supposed to say or do and described how he would look and feel. What is it if not using the guy as a prop for the little dramedy she stages and deceiving him into fruitlessly chasing her own fantasies? She wanted a family and got it. Do you think she cares about the poor bastard? She cares that he plays his part well, but it wasn't his name she cried in my bed, he leered. The sucker was getting his once a month and had a mother for his kids, so I guess it's a win-win for them both. Alvin finished his beer and put the glass on the table. Others don't care about the family aspect and only want your dough, and others are looking for a shoulder to cry on. It's always about, I give you this and you give me that. How is my case different? It's always a negotiation process, the drawing up of a contract and the small war that comes with getting the opposite side to sign off on your terms and abolish their own. It doesn't have to be a war. It does when you're playing to win. Rolf suddenly appeared behind the couch and said, Guys, I'm going to leave now. He winked to the girl at the bar counter. She stood up and walked in their direction, turning every head in the place with the mere action. Let's take a picture together and I'll be off. Mia and Senya returned and everyone gathered around the couch. The girl in the sheet dress cried, Say, cheeky monkeys, and took a photo. Okay, let's go. Ciao, said Rolf to everyone as he walked back to the girl, hugged her shoulder and while looking confident as ever, pulled her to the exit. The girl said nothing and only slightly nodded goodbye with a Mona Lisa smile on her face. Senya stepped closer to Damien and asked, Do you want to dance? He worriedly glanced at Mia, thinking it wouldn't be a good idea to leave her with Alvin, but Senya misinterpreted this look, leaned forward and playfully commanded, Dance floor. Yes, sure. He hesitated for a moment and then said, Let's go. He checked on Mia a couple of times but finally stopped, thinking she was a big girl and didn't need a babysitter. After several fast tracks, it was time for another slow song, so he wrapped his arm around Senya's waist and took her soft hand in his. Even though he wasn't checking on Mia anymore, he was still thinking about her and Alvin. Alvin's former conquests came to mind, the possible hurt he might cause her, and the thought about what he had seen in Mia's eyes. These thoughts opened the door for others and Liv, accompanied by his past, to join the party and begin dragging him down through the murky waters of regret. His body became more rigid, and a shadow of worry crossed his face. Senya couldn't help but notice the sudden change. She squeezed his hand to get his attention and, looking him in the eyes, simply said, "Relax," with a smile. The gesture was so friendly and warm that Damien wanted to ask, "What are you doing?" in surprise, but stopped after the first word, "What?" Senya wasn't like Alvin or Rolf, neither of whom would have noticed the change, or aggressive like Liv, who would have tried to knock him off kilter to get what she wanted, or submissive like so many others who would just stare blankly at him, saying nothing and hoping he'd snap out of it himself. She was active and yet gentle, standing there like an old friend and slowly dissolving all his troubling thoughts with her kindness. "Relax," she repeated with the tinkle of a laugh, and let him lead the dance. Damien felt the stiffness in his hand receding, as if it were melting from the warmth of her fingers, and soon he was smiling again and enjoying the present moment. His back straightened as he looked at Senya and pulled her closer to him, taking the lead. He forgot about time and space as everything and everyone around disappeared, leaving them alone on the dance floor. The bartender cleared the last glasses from the counter and wiped it down with a towel. He turned around and cried, "Guys, the club is going to close soon." The overhead lights came on to prove his point and to signal the end of business hours. People from the semi-empty dance floor started to slowly move to the lounge area and then to the exit. Senya went to the couch, followed by Damien. Both were tired from dancing and going back and forth between the dance floor and the bar. Alvin was sitting alone with Mia, his hand resting on the back of the couch behind her. Senya glanced at them and tried to find her clutch on the table, but it was lost among the countless empty glasses and bottles. "Wow, how much did you drink, guys?" she asked in amazement, searching the table. Mia tried to stand up but fell to the side. Alvin caught her by the hand. "My driver is waiting outside. I'll take you home." He looked at her the way a snake looked at a mouse. His eyes were clear as though he had contributed to none of the bottles on the table, but the way his tongue was struggling with forming sentences made it obvious that he had. Damien recalled their earlier conversation again and, mentally preparing for Alvin's wrath, said, "Thanks, but we can take care of her." "I don't think you—" "I'm not asking." Damien took Mia's hand and quickly pulled her to the exit before Alvin could act. Senya looked puzzled. Thanks for the evening. See you later," she said to Alvin, and ran after Mia. Alvin didn't move an inch, paralysed by his fury. He was breathing heavily and clenching his both fists, sitting on the couch and staring at the floor. His driver entered the bar a little later and stood patiently with his hands clasped together waiting for instructions. Alvin raised his eyes and cried, "Get me an Asian girl and a redhead, like the last time," and waved the driver away before he stood up and straightened his shirt and jacket. "For the damage," he said to the bartender, throwing several bills on the table. "What damage?" Alvin took a glass of whiskey and drank it in one quick gulp. He looked at the glass and imagined Damien's face in the reflection. "He's not asking," he whispered angrily and smashed the glass on the floor. "He'll learn to do so." Damien was standing outside calling for a taxi and holding Mia, who was constantly falling in different directions. "Oh my," said Senya, trying her best to help him keep Mia standing up straight and worriedly clasping her wrist. "She's not usually like this. I mean, I've actually never seen her like this. Okay, maybe once, but we were teenagers." Her speech was fast and frantic. "I told her we shouldn't even drink today. Well, no more than 1 or 2 beers. And she can drink a lot and not get drunk, but she doesn't usually drink. Not this amount for sure. I don't know why. What?" Damien put his hand on Senya's shoulder and waited until she looked at him. Giving her a chance to calm down, he slowly said, "It's okay. She'll go home, get a good night's sleep, and be fresh as a pickle tomorrow." Senya lightly chuckled. "As a daisy, you mean?" "Whatever you prefer," he smiled, returning some of the warmth she gave him earlier. A taxi pulled over and stopped in front of them, humming quietly and lighting up the street with its headlights. I guess I'll take it from here. Thank you, and sorry for everything. Senya moved closer, trying to hug Damien goodbye, but abandoned this idea as soon as she realised she couldn't do it while holding Mia at the same time. I'm glad to help, and there's no need to be sorry. It's not your fault. He glanced at Mia, and not hers either. He let go of Mia and saw tiny Senya struggling to get her into the car. You know what? Damien opened the back door of the taxi and helped the girls get inside. I'll go with you, just in case. It's not a problem, really. He jumped in the back seat after them and closed the door. The taxi took off and cut through the night to Mia's place. It rocked Mia to sleep, and Damien felt her head fall on his shoulder. He gently touched her chin, turned her head the other way, slowly placing it on Senya's shoulder instead, and winked. Senya smiled, took hold of Mia's hand, and looked out of the window. Do you want me to wait here? Asked the driver in a thick accent, stopping the car in front of Mia's house. Damien shot a questioning glance at Senya. I'll stay at her place, she answered quickly. Okay, and I'll walk home. He turned back to the taxi driver and paid for the ride. No need to wait, thanks. They climbed out of the car and went to the porch while Senya tried to find the keys in Mia's clutch. After a short struggle, she said, "Got it," and unlocked the front door. Damien stepped inside and couldn't believe how cosy the place felt. It was as if every single object in the flat were imbued with the joy Mia constantly radiated and was giving off a welcoming comfort. While he waited in the entrance hall for Senya to lay Mia down on the bed, he felt the events of the day starting to take their toll on him. Yawning, he leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. Are you sure you don't need a taxi? Senya was already back, trying not to keep him waiting. Yes, I'll walk home. Okay then. Thanks again for everything. Maybe we'll see each other again at uni. She stood on her toes and briefly hugged him. Damien hugged her back before he stepped outside and closed the door. He breathed in the night air and looked around. There wasn't a soul in sight. The whole city was completely dark, sleeping peacefully along with its inhabitants. Damien put his hands in his pockets and walked along the empty street. It took him several minutes before he realised it was unusually quiet. He had already crossed a couple of blocks, but not a single car nor a single person had passed him. No one was going back home from a wild Friday night, or driving a spouse or a friend to the airport, or coming back from work in the financial district in Frankfurt. He also noticed that he couldn't hear a single sound, not even the sound of his own footsteps. Damien stopped, bewildered, and listened carefully. Nothing. Even his breath was silent, as if someone had muted the whole world. Suddenly, a deafening call pierced his ears and he saw one of the lampposts nearby light up, revealing a crow standing in the road right in the middle of the cone of light. Caw! Caw! The crow was staring at Damien, holding a small piece of paper in one of its claws. Damien hesitantly took a step forward toward the light. The glossy black creature opened its wings wide but remained standing where it was, still watching Damien, who crept closer. He squatted down in front of the bird and slowly stretched his hand out, trying to touch it. It cawed at him again, pecking at his hand with its long, shining beak, and in one swift movement flew up, rising above the lamppost. Damien looked above him, but the sky was empty, and not a single trace of the bird was to be seen. Baffled, he noticed the piece of paper that it had been holding in its claw slowly falling down to the ground. It was torn and partly burned, with something written on it. Damien picked it up and heard the rush of his heart beating in his ears. November 15. I have to do some. A fresh start. Why not try?